Anyhow, so now we're able to jump to the shir. We said a little bit of a mulsa b'dichasa. We said a little bit of a joke. So now we're able to jump into the shir. We're holding Parak Beis in Mimer Test. I think we're in. Mimer Test. Parak Beis in Mimer Test, and we were discussing the concept that you have that when you have will in your body, we proved in a few different ways that the will expresses itself evenly throughout the body. When I want to move my leg, and then sometimes I want to move my leg because I have a reason for moving my leg, and that's not what we're talking about. Sometimes if I want to move my leg, and it's just something that I need to do, something that my body knows it needs to do, and an instinct, a reflex, whatever it is, the leg moves instantaneously. It doesn't need to consult with anyone. It doesn't need to do anything. I think the doctors, I've always seen, I've never had it done to me, I don't think I've had it done to me. They take the little hammer, and they...
You've never done that?
I don't think so.
I can do it too. You don't need a hammer. You can do it with your hand.
No, whatever it is,
Incredible.
It's not like a life experience that I'm literally like so desperate to have. It's just like a thing that I've seen. I've just never. They take the little hammer, and they hit your knee or something, and then the leg moves. And the leg isn't like consulting the brain. Like, is this a rational thing for me to move when the hammer hits me? Because I know that the hammer is really not going to hurt. The leg doesn't do any such judgment. The leg just does it. So we said that's how you see that will affects the body evenly throughout. It's not something that like it's really in the brain and then it's able to move around. This is not so with other kinds of movement that require intelligence, like dancing a complicated dance that the brain needs to be measured. People need to have a very fast reaction time, especially if the music could change or if they don't know the song that they're dancing to or whatever it is. And depending on how skilled they are, they can do it better or worse. But the point is that the brain gives the signals. The mind is the one that's calling the shots. So this is like the example that we gave, and so we said that the results from this is that things which happen based on reasoning happen over the course of time, and it takes effort, it takes work, and things which are expressed in the will do not take time and they do not take effort. So now we're gonna try to apply this concept, which applies to our lives, and we're gonna try to apply it to Chassidus, in a sense. Sometimes I wonder if if we're getting lost in the forest and not looking at the individual tree, because very often I would rather take the Hagar of Hashem about Seichel and Ratzon and how they actually apply to me more so than how it applies to the Eibusher. Sometimes, but there's also obviously a massive mile with the Torah and how it works. It's just interesting that they happen to coincide so perfectly and directly, in this way. Anyhow. So what this is an example for, we can understand as it applies above. The Esses that Silos, because the 10 spheres of Atzilus are on the level of light being enclosed in vessels. We mentioned that at the beginning, just briefly, we mentioned that at the beginning of the last ace. And we said that you have spheres are like light, and things that they're invested in are like kelim, that they're like vessels. And we said that the same way that you have a vessel that is like, let's say, green, and a light shines into it, then the light could be filtered to look green. That's how it gets limited in a sense through the spheres. And the first of them is the level of Chachma. And it's called first. It's called first because it is at the top of hishtalshelus, at the top of the chain of it's at the top of the chain of cause and effect, if you will, of the spheres. And from Chachma, the next level that comes down in the chain is the level of Bina. In the same way that in the soul, in the abilities of the soul, the point of Chachma shines into the understanding of Bina. And Bina it says that Bina is like the mother of the children, that Bina gives birth to emotions. Knowing something isn't enough to get you to feel something. Knowing something and understanding something and having a full grasp of the concept, it's still not quite there of having emotions, but it's one step away. It's like one iota. There's just a block maybe sometimes that can happen. There needs to be something else to interface between the understanding and the emotion. which we call das, and das is very, very complicated, how you have that interface that changes. But the last step of, I guess, if you want to say pure intellect, is the understanding. The furthest that a person can get before actually having an emotion in pure intellect is that they understand it, which is bina. So this is also how it is above with the series of Chokhmah. Chokhmah gives way into bina, and from intellect you get to emotions.
So effective. Sorry, just to comment. Emotions are affected by intellect.
Yes.
You don't have emotions. You know, when you say someone's like in a secular term, it's like you're being emotional as opposed to being logical.
So you do have that very often, and very often the emotions get away from you. But the emotions necessarily depend on intellect, because if a person gets emotional, what happens is they get some kind of intellect, and usually they get influenced by one particular detail. As in, like, let's say a person, give me an example of something you feel emotional about.
Anger.
Anger. So
frustrated you.
Because a person is what?
Frustrated you.
Okay, so a person is let's say talking to someone, they're frustrating them, so they get angry. So they know everything in the situation. They know that this person is annoying them. So now they can focus on a lot of other things in the conversation. For starters, in the situation. For starters, the person that they're talking to could not be socially aware. They could not be socially active. It could also be that they know that they only got 4 hours of sleep the night before, and they themselves only got 4 hours of sleep the night before, and that they're probably running short on patience because they really need to get to sleep. All of these details really could add together, and what they should be knowing is they should know Parak Kafeh of Igeres HaKodesh, where the Alter Rebbe explains how it's impossible to get angry, and if you learn that for like every day for a month, I think it becomes virtually impossible to get angry. Pro tip for all of the Parak Kafeh of Igeres HaKodesh. Money back guarantee.
All right.
I'm a Tanya. If I did, it would be my money back guarantee. Parak Kafeh Igeres HaKodesh. I'll try to explain this a little bit too much for the amount of time that we have left, but it becomes virtually impossible to get angry. And all of these things are things that he can know, but rather he focuses on the one thing: the fact that he wants the conversation to be going somewhere, and the conversation isn't going there, and that it's this person's fault. And so he gets angry. Now, if he wouldn't know what's going on in the conversation at all, if he would just be blind and deaf, he wouldn't be getting angry. I mean, he might be angry about being blind and deaf, but he wouldn't be getting angry because of the conversation or anything like that. It takes something. It takes some kind of intellect. It takes that he knows what's going on in the conversation, and he understands this person is realistically probably at least a little bit annoying. With intention, without intention, probably there's some kind of annoying quality about him. He knows these things, and this is what he's focusing on. And why he's focusing on it? Well, it's possible that he has a predisposition because this is how he's been living his entire life, because he hasn't been learning Chavei V'Igeres HaKodesh. Whatever the reason may be, he needs to know something. It's a thing that people don't like to acknowledge. A lot of therapists like to say that the emotions, that people have natural emotions, and that there's nothing that has to do with the mind. What a new branches of therapy are trying to do. I think this has been going on for quite a while at this point, but they try to reframe experiences to try to help the person heal. And the reason why that works so well is because everything depends on the intellect. And if you have a different understanding of the situation, you're able to change the emotions. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So, Avol hishtalshelus. The light of and safe, which is above hishtalshelus. There's a chain of order how this works. You have intellect, gives birth to emotion, etc. And safe that's above hishtalshelus doesn't play by any of these rules. There's an entire hishtalshelus. Hashem has this idea of how the world should work in Chokhmah, and then it goes down to Bina, and then it goes down to the Midas, and then ultimately comes down to the world in Hashpah. That's good and nice. And then there's Erin says it's above hishtalshelus that Hashem's to say, really, like all of these things are nice. But as we said in Tasim Tiful by Rav Pashach and Taslei, that if a person does Averis, it doesn't make a difference to God Hashem. And there's a level of Erin safe that's above hishtalshelus in which Taka doesn't make a difference. And as we explained before, that the will of the soul does not have an individual body part. It doesn't need to start in the brain and work its way down until ultimately it sends the nerve signals to the body so that it can dance the tango or whatever it is. Ratzon will express itself evenly throughout the body. It doesn't. So if this is how it is with will. it doesn't come in an internal way. It comes in a makritic way. It doesn't need to follow through the pipes. It doesn't need to flow through the pipes. It could just hit anywhere. It's all around the body at the same time. This is also how it is with Eri and Seif. It's above hishtalshelus. It doesn't need to come down in a way of Eris and Kelim. It doesn't need to come down in a way that it shines into the vessels, and different vessels will filter the light in different ways until ultimately you can get the hologram that is this world, or whatever it is, if you want to really pull the mashal. But Eri and Seif just hits anywhere. It does whatever it wants in this world. It doesn't need to go through this entire passage. Well, with this, we could understand why in Seder Shalshalos, why in the chain of cause and effect in the spiritual life and midas, why there is a calculation and a judgment about how sustenance should come down. And above Seder Shalshalos, things could come down without any kind of calculation. Because in Hishtalshelus the issue because it's an internal light and everything depends on the level before it. It's that the light from Ur and Seif, that it needs to go down, it needs to get filtered through the kelim. You need to have a vessel that's fitting for the revelation of the light. And something that isn't fit for the revelation of the light is not able to receive. The vessel, and the vessel which is fit for the revelation of the light is nullification. Something which is nullified to godliness is what's able to receive a revelation of light. If you want to really pull the mashal of Eris and Kelim, you could say that it's the same way that if you have a vessel and you're trying to shine light, you're trying to make a hologram. If the thing you're trying to shine it through is opaque, or if the thing is not transparent, then the light won't shine through. It needs to be nullified to the light. The light needs to let the light pass through it. So in Seder Shalshalos, if you're not impartial to Alikos, if you're not nullified to godliness, then the Ur and Seif can't shine through because you're not a vessel for it. So the Ur and Seif it's known that Ur and Seif dwells primarily in a place of nullification. And therefore, the main place of the dwelling of Ur and Seif is Davka in Chachma. Because Chachma is what we call Koyach Man. It's the power of what? I'll explain that in a second. As it says in Seif Shalmenim in Tanya, in Parakalamin in the note over there. So Chachma being Koyach Ma is we say that wisdom is something that we don't know the source of wisdom. It's just information, and there's so much to be said about Chachma being Koyach Ma. But the point is that in order to achieve wisdom, a person first needs to sit and, in a sense, nullify their mind. They need to empty their mind in order to allow wisdom to come into it. And there's a lot of ways in which Chachma personifies Bittul. In a lot of ways, Chachma also personifies Yeshus. It's not at the beginning of a Shalshalos, and in order to have whatever, I could get way too far ahead of myself over here. But the point is that wisdom, in order to be wise, you need to have a little bit of humility. We'll leave it at that, just because we have like 3 minutes left, and I do want to finish. Aval Mashu Kinas Yeshus, something which is Yeshus, something which has a sense of self. Ein Anivu Yechidin Ladar. Hashem says that I and he cannot dwell together. There's a long Gemara about Yeshus and humility in Masechet Sota. This is from that Gemara. Check it out over there. It's good stuff. But so Ein Anivu Yechidin Ladar. Hashem says I can't be in the same place as someone that has Yeshus. So it says, the Rebbe Shav says, I don't know if this is necessarily taking it out of context, it's shining a new light on it, pun not intended, but shining a new light on the concept. He says, because if a person is not doesn't have bittul, then they're not a keli for the gilei er. They're not a vessel for the revelation of Hashem's light. The whole side of Kedusha, which is the level, which is the side of bittul, nullification, there Hashem's holiness is able to dwell. As it says in Tanya, see there. This is why in Seder Shalshalos there is a judgment and a calculation. If the person is fitting for, or not just the person necessarily, the thing, but if it's fitting for the for the light and vitality of godliness. Something which isn't nullified to Hashem, but rather something distinct for itself. It doesn't receive from Hashem's holiness. As we explained in the second Maimon and in the seventh Maimon, about how the other side, the side that isn't holiness, the side which we're now realizing is the distinction is whether it's nullified to godliness or if it's not nullified to godliness, that they receive their vitality through a level of achirayim. They receive it in a way like someone that goes over their shoulder. I'm surprised it doesn't say that, because usually when I say alakim achirim, that it's like come on each other, that's like a sway, usually he ends up saying the words on his own, and I get it out of myself. But anyway, he doesn't do it this time. That's beside the point. Rather, someone that's nullified to Hashem, and he fulfills Hashem's will, he's batal to Hashem, he's nullified to Hashem. This is the ikr. Such a person is fitting for the sustenance of Hashem's vitality that comes from Hashem's holiness. So, Kitzur, Esesres Datzilos, Heim, Eretz Primim, Hamslapshim, Kelim, Las Imim, Uvayim, Hishtalshelus. So the 10 spheres of Atzilus are internal lights. They shine through the whole chain of command. And they encode themselves in vessels that are fitting for them in hishtalshelus. The first sphere is Chachma, which is the power of what, which you need to have nullification to have Chachma. Chachma represents nullification in that sense. The sustenance comes by calculation according to the nullification that the thing has. Because nullification is a fitting vessel for the holiness for the holiness of Hashem to dwell. Right, yeah.